The following video is not suited for children. Well, here we are again, back in the bunker. After Christmas I got some spending money to spruce up the place just in time for Lockdown 2 Electric Boogaloo! I'm not going to make a comment on the current situation of the world in my first video of the year again because that aged so well in the Kangaroo Jack review last year. Instead, I'm just going to sit in this bunker in isolation until this whole horror show blows over. At least I've got internet. Christ, could you imagine being stuck here with no internet while a virus runs amok around the world? How else would the boys and girls watch their dank memes and funny animal videos without the internet? Well, you see folks, there was once a time when the internet didn't exist, or at least wasn't as prevalent in our lives as it is today. And if you did have the internet, well, it'd take 5 minutes for it to load one poorly compressed JPEG of a kitten. And God forbid you got a phone call on the landline while the picture was downloading. So how did people in the 90s and early 2000s get their fill of funny animals without the internet? Well, there were 3 options. Option 1 was to simply get a pet, but that came with the burden of having to feed it and keep it from pissing on your slippers. Option 2 was to just watch shows like You've Been Framed and America's Funniest Home Videos where people would submit short films of their pets being stupid for you to laugh at. The only problem is you'd have to wait until it came on TV once a week and hope it wasn't a repeat of the last episode. This leads us to option 3. Make a movie with animals in it. Yeah, you had to pay to see it, but if you bought the videotape or DVD, then you could just watch the funny animal films anytime on demand. It truly was the perfect solution to the world's funny animal needs. Or that's my theory at least for why the live-action talking animal genre of films blew up in the 90s and the early 2000s. It started out with Beethoven, where the big dog do the funny, and then some clever dick realised CGI was a thing so he could make the animals talk in Babe, and before you know it, every producer on the planet caught a whiff of the money, and now talking animal movies are everywhere. I grew up in the period where these were most rampant, and so of course I remember watching many of them as a kid. I would go over all of them, but for now, I'll talk about the 3 that stand out in my memory the most, with the first one being... Made in 2001, the film was directed by Lawrence Gutterman, who you might know for also directing Ants and Son of the Mask. The film features the acting talents of Jeff Goldblum, Elizabeth Perkins, and some other people I'll get into later, as well as a bunch of animals. There's not really a whole lot I can say about this film, aside from the fact it was made for $60 million and had a fairly standard production behind it. I found no reports or records showing the film to have killed anything during production, so let's see what the appeal of these talky animal films was then, shall we? The film opens in an idealistic, quiet suburban neighbourhood. A cat plays with a newspaper while the dog inside the house barks at it. This film really does do what it says on the box right away. The kid lets the dog out and hijinks naturally ensue. Ah yes, Ficus elastica, the rubber tree. I see absolutely nothing wrong here. The cat gets catapulted away and lands in the house of this woman.
My beautiful pie.
That's more of a tart, actually. Do you even know you're baking? That's a tart, you pie! And as punishment for her hubris, God knocks her down with the animals and gives her 3rd-degree burns from the tart. The chase goes on a little longer and ends with... Nah, JK, this isn't Plague Dogs. The dog just gets dog-napped. No, I'm sorry, cat-napped. And then, out of nowhere, the film just drops the fact that Dog MI5 exists on us like it's no big deal. You can't just do that, Lawrence! At least wait until we're mentally prepared for a reveal that big. We go from Tom and Jerry to Taken with no warning at all. Apparently, the dog that lived in that house was part of the Dog MI5, so it's decided that a new agency-trained dog will need to take its place. Also, if you want to get drunk while watching this video, feel free to take a sip of your preferred drink every time I say cat or dog. If you end this video sober, then clearly your drink wasn't strong enough. The mum of the house decides to adopt a new puppy on account of their old dog going missing, and we're introduced to the main character of the film. This puppy that wants to see the world and live an exciting life. Of course, shenanigans happen, and because of a series of comedic events, he gets picked out by the mom. The puppy is brought home, and the kid is pretty apathetic towards it given how he's still bummed out his old dog's gone missing. It's at this point we're introduced to Jeff Goldblum playing some scientist that needs a dog for his research. Also, that's not scripted, that's just what happens when you leave Jeff Goldblum alone with animals. Get out of here, Jeff, before you give the poor thing a disease.
Why don't you name him?
How about loser?
Alright, fine, you manky brat. At least pretend to be thankful for the new dog before you throw it in the river.
I wouldn't do that if I were you.
Is that? Oh, I think it is.
Stand back.
Hey, that's my biscuit!
I guess HQ ain't training you guys the way they used to.
Yes, it is. Ladies and gentlemen, making his return appearance to the channel in another trash movie, give it up for Alec Baldwin. Man, the early 2000s was a rough time in your career. Alec Beagle explains to the new dog that Jeff Goldblum has been working on a cure for dog allergies, and it's the job of the house dog to keep him safe and prevent any cats from stealing or sabotaging it. We're then introduced to the rest of the team. There's this fucking gremlin that acts as the guy in the chair, and this shaggy dog that likes to pretend to be stealthy while it rolls around the place and fast forward. They all eventually realise that the new pup isn't from the dog MI5, and so they end up having to train him themselves. Meanwhile, we're introduced to the film's antagonist, a Persian cat bent on, I don't know, making people like cats more than dogs, I guess. I didn't write the script, don't look at me. Anyway, he's trying to break into the lab so he can steal Jeff's research. On to the next scene, please. Pup is tasked with defending the house and helping Jeff with his experiments. We also find out that because of all his time spent doing these experiments, Jeff spends no time with his son, helping him practice football. Yes, football, not soccer, and if you're a stupid yank who wants to try and correct me on that, then you can shove that correction up your ass! Cut to later that night. The cats decide to send in ninjas in an attempt to steal Jeff's science stuff. Puppa investigates and we get treated to this, what I hesitate to call a fight scene. Like, not only is it unsettling to see these cats and dogs moving in such an unnatural way, but the CGI also hasn't aged well, making it look worse. There's some weird editing too, like these shots that have been slowed down in post, even though they're computer generated. Would it have really killed the budget just to render the CG at a higher frame rate for the slow-mo? Also, the use of stock cartoon sound effects just makes the whole thing a jarring mess audibly. I didn't think it was possible, but somehow I found a worse fight scene than the one from the Thunderbirds movie. The noise wakes up Mum and Dad, so the cats just bugger off. Like, no joke, they have the dog on the ropes and they could have just waited for the parents to go back to bed before stealing the science stuff, but nah, sod that, they just leave. Dog gets put outside on what could be the worst turfed lawn I have ever seen in my life and is congratulated by the others for surviving the cat attack. Also, he meets this female stray dog that's very important later on in the film, I promise. Next day, Brat starts warming up to the dog and Jeff emerges from his man cave to promise the kid he'll attend his football tryouts and actually try to be a good father for once. Weirdly transition to the literal next scene and we find out the kid didn't do well in his tryouts and Jeff never showed up on account of his work. Both parents argue while the kid watches on from beneath his football net. And I'm no psychologist, but from my understanding of behaviour like this is a sign the kid will have anxiety in the future. Evil Cat is angry the ninjas failed, so he sends in, quote, the Russian. The mum finds this cat outside and for some reason she just brings it back into the house. Like, it's obviously a setup for the film, but who sees a cat on the street and just fucking takes it? Maybe the mother was the real criminal the whole time. Anyway, the cat is a bad guy and we get another fight scene between the dogs and the cat involving the cat coughing up hairballs filled with weapons and shit. Yes, it is as disgusting as it sounds, and no, nothing noteworthy happens. Apart from this bit where Jeff comes out of the lab and accidentally notices the dog walking off set. Dogs win, cat gets captured, and Akita Baldwin congratulates the pup again, reminding him that he needs to ignore the brat and focus on keeping Jeff Goldblum safe. This then obviously transitions into a scene where the dog begins to become friends with the brat. I'll take this downtime now to share a bit of fun information I found on the cast of this film. Aside from Jeff Goldblum, Elizabeth Perkins and Alec Baldwin, there weren't any names in the crowd that really stood out to me, as expected in a B-grade movie like this, but then I looked at the voice actors for the dogs, and boy did it get wild. We've been over Alec Baldwin, but what you might not know is Tobey Maguire voices the main dog in this film, Spiderman as a talking dog, and supposedly he based his performance on Keanu Reeves from The Matrix. Oh, and that shaggy-haired dog? Michael Clark Duncan, his first ever voice acting role. But you want to know the best part? A few voice actors were called in to make some animal noises, as you do, and one of them was none other than Frank Welker. Megatron makes dog noises in this film! Oops, looks like Jeff left the lab door open and the kid accidentally trashed all of the dog allergy work. But wait, because of movie magic, the accident somehow caused the right mix of chemicals to blend together and make the formula work. You know, just like real life science. The cats catch wind of the news and decide to hurry along their evil plan. They take over the factory belonging to their ill owner and send the family free tickets to a football game. They go to the game and because it's obviously a trap, the cats knock out and kidnap the family. Later that night, the dogs receive a ransom tape from the evil cat, basically saying that if they don't hand over Jeff Goldblum's secret formula, they'll kill the family. Spider-Dog is obviously upset and so Alec Baldwin decides to take him to the dog MI5 HQ so the ones in charge can casually have a meeting in the center of the earth to decide whether they save the family or not. Having met someone that's worked on a film set like this, I can tell you from second-hand experience that organizing this many animals to do a take like this is actual production hell. So while I'm impressed they pulled this off, I can't help but feel sorry for everyone behind the scenes that had to make this scene happen, when all they could have done was have Peter Parker simply get a doggy text message saying no, because the dog council say no to saving the family. The dog MI5 HQ scenes probably cost a few million to make and end up adding nothing to the film aside from a few mediocre jokes. Back to business, Peter Parker is naturally upset he can't help his family out when suddenly Alec Baldwin just gets real for a moment.
We tolerate that stupid bougie baby talk crap. And for what? So when they go off to college, they can dump you with some old lady who can't throw a ball without so much as breaking her hip.
Peter Pupper, not wanting his family to get smacked, decides to give the cats the research in hopes they will give his family back. Obviously the cats being arseholes simply take it and beat him up, leading the dogs to set off on a rescue mission. Call this a tight operation? Of course dogs would make such a stupid mistake. You see, it would have been a much better operation if the Parakeet Investigational Services had been involved. The dogs set off to the rescue with the help from that female stray dog that I mentioned earlier and discover the cat's evil plan factory place. The cat reveals himself to Jeff and the family and uses the brat to test out this new formula that makes people allergic to dogs. He also happens to keep this little dog in a cage for whatever reason. The formula works and so he sets the room on fire with the family in it. The D team arrive just in time to witness the cat explaining how he's going to cover mice in the allergen and use them to make humans allergic to dogs. As much as I've bashed on this film so far, the villain cat is without question a highlight for me. He's just so entertaining to watch. I believe the term to describe him would be extra.
Cats will overthrow the humans, and you will be given your much-deserved reward. 16 pounds of Monterey Jack and the continent of Australia!
The dogs crash the party and stop the mice while Toby Mastiff goes and rescues the family.
Can you talk to?
Kid, the room is on fire. Book it before you... Well, never mind then. Alec Baldwin gets into trouble and so the dog jumps to his rescue. He saves Baldwin but gets caught by the big digger, shovel grabber, whatever, as it crashes into some machinery. The family escape just as it goes critical and we get a nice little explosion to cap off the scene. Also, that caged dog is probably dead. We never see it get away or be mentioned, so in my headcanon it's dead. Oh no, it looks like Toby Mongrel died in the conflict. Oh, what a shame. Well, I guess it's important to teach kids the futility of life and that. Oh, I'm not gonna bother. You can see the dog moving. His eyes are open. You couldn't CG them shut or something? You've been doing that throughout the whole film. Screw your immersion, I guess. Spider-Dog's alive and decides to quit being an agent to live with his family and everyone lives happily ever after. So that was Cats and Dogs. If you took part in the drinking game, I congratulate you for coming this far without throwing up. Unless you did, in which case better luck next time. Is this film good? My best response to that is... It's one of those films that's hard to place. It's not bad, but it's not great. It takes itself seriously enough to give the plot some weight, but is self-aware enough to not take itself too seriously. I'd say it's competently written for what it is, and there are some actual funny jokes from time to time. Some of the jokes are in that weird position where they're so bad they're funny ironically, but most of the time they're either hit or miss. I'm not sure whether to congratulate or condemn this film for not focusing too much on the family as most films in this nature do. It shows enough of the family for them to be relevant to the plot, but not enough to overshadow the dog spy stuff, so I guess it got something right. I appreciate the use of puppets where possible, and the animation on the animals' eyes and mouths is smooth enough, although there are some shots where it's clearly noticeable. The fully CG animals are also a bit hit or miss and can be uncanny at times, but they look alright for 2001 computer animation. The IMDb says that the director wanted to animate the film, and personally I agree that would have been the better choice. The sound design is one of the more annoying parts of the film to me. The use of cartoony sound effects in live action films always feels jarring to me no matter how well the rest of the audio is mixed, so I'm going to have to take points away for that. There are also some other weird editing tricks used in this film, such as footage being fast forwarded or slowed down in post, or sometimes just straight up reversed. The acting is what you'd expect in a flick like this. Nobody's exactly bringing their A game to the table, but there's at least some effort going into their performances. As far as child actors go, the brat did a good job and isn't the most annoying character in the film, so make of that what you will. Goodest Boy Award? Nobody really stood out to me apart from Michael Clarke Duncan's character. Though it was his first time voice acting, you can tell he seemed to have some fun in the studio recording his lines, and if that isn't worthy of a Goodest Boy Award, then I don't know what is. So, would I recommend it? Again, it's not a bad film, but it's not exactly great. It's got decent writing and was competently made, but it's not got anything else going for it. I'd call it passable. If it was watch this or watch paint dry, I'd choose this, but there are definitely talking animal films that are much better than this, like Zootopia or Rango. Ooh, or Babe Pig in the City, because that was directed by the Mad Max guy. If you really want to watch it though, I'd recommend watching it with mates so you can take the piss out of it. Just looking out for moments where the animals' mouths don't move in sync with the dialogue, times when the dogs aren't quite acting right, or some of the flat out weird editing. Just little nitpick errors that are great to joke at. So that was part 1 of the Talking Animal trilogy. Off to a strong start with a mediocre film. Join me next time when I review a film that I'm not entirely sure all of you will know, and keep digging deeper in hopes of figuring out the real reason behind the sudden bombardment of talking animal films in the early 2000s. Or maybe I guessed correctly at the beginning of the video. Who knows? Remember, do the like and subscribe thing, and roll the outro!